Well, hello everyone. Here to show you the Sonic Zero coloring activity right here. As you see right here, as I went ahead and drew right here, is a picture of Sonic, and anybody could probably thinking about that I actually drew that picture right there of Sonic, and then of course right there is for zero. It's like for the number zero, and anybody could probably thinking about that is like zero. Zero is not even a number, more likely because it equals to so less. So it's like people probably thinking about that. That if you just like start out with maybe zero, and then you work your way up to maybe 5 points or maybe 10 points or something like that, maybe 10 cents or $10, something like that, maybe $5 it is. But basically is that talking about is like for the number zero, and most of us would maybe think about that with zero, that knowing about if it means so less, then more likely that really why even work with it. And anybody, if most of us here have ever done any type of long division problems or anything like that, we could probably think about if we were to do any type of long division problems, or if it was anything related to a mathematical type products, basic math, type of basic math, or if it was maybe geometry. If I can remember right, that like the type of numbers that more likely you will probably be using, like for say geometry, it is, and basically that if it works is by that using the numbers instead of letters, such as say key algebra or anything like that. But basically about numbers though, that if most of us have done long division problems, is like talking about with the long division, that knowing about that something like 5, it's like 5 and 5, or something like that, 5 divided by 5 or anything like that, and knowing about that type of stuff. It's like for equals, it's like 5 goes into 5, and if I can remember right, I think one time something like that, if you do the division right. And a lot of times with most of the math teachers I had before is talking about that they would let you use a calculator. Other times that they said that you gotta do it in your head, or go ahead and a lot of times that they would give you an extra space on the schoolwork, just to be able to solve the problem. It is. With anybody would probably think about that if you want to go ahead and do your homework, it was, and like solve a problem, it was, and knowing about it, it's like use some extra space on the paper just to solve the problem, it is. And I would probably tell anybody that I guess that's more likely the smart way to do, because knowing about the fact about to tell them that you didn't cheat either, that you were looking at some type of notes hidden in like what you call that secreted area that you have at your desk, it is. The school desk, it is, or if it was anywhere, any type of desk. But anyway, you have right here, it's like for the Sonic, it's like for a Sonic the Hedgehog. But anyway, that they talk about right here is like for Sonic, and knowing about it, you probably think about that. Yeah, you drew the Sonic, and if you want to go ahead and prove that you drew the Sonic, it is, and knowing about, go ahead and maybe that you talk about with zero right here is like knowing about how many times that he's able to spin, of course, and the amount of times he's able to spin, and going in like what you call is like a diagonal, say type angle, it is, and knowing about maybe about how many rings that he can collect. And anybody probably think about, if most of us are familiar with like what you call is like the Sega Genesis games that of course we played. It's like besides maybe Sonic Spinball, or maybe Sonic 1, Sonic 2, and this Sonic and Knuckles. I'm sure most of us are familiar with, like you say, games like Sonic and Knuckles, it is. And of course kind of look like bubbles in a lot of ways, but go ahead and that right here is just a little bit yellow right here. It's like for characters, like talking about right here, right here is the rings. Like knowing about you drew the rings, okay, what's the next thing that more likely be drawn, of course, is go ahead and maybe add just a little bit of blue, say around there, blue, just to know about the They are rings. Anybody probably thinking about, yeah, rings, huh? Well, we talk about like, type of engagement ring, or we talking about, a type of a ring. It's like, that represents points. It is, and talking about that is like that those things that you would see on like what you call like maybe the Sega for Sega Genesis, or if it was the Sega CD, or if it was the Dreamcast or whatever. This type of the type of rings right there. But anyway, that you have right here is like with the rings right here, and you collect the number of rings, and quite a few of them probably think about that. Anybody probably think about that. If you collect ring about, you say you got about maybe 6 or 7 rings, and about right here it is, and knowing about that that's not equal to 0. It's like, well, what? How does it go from what you call like for number 7, or maybe if it was a sideways in or something like that, or maybe the sideways L or anything like that. Like I think about it, it's like that. It goes from you say that this number right here. Anybody probably think about, would this number right here, would that equal to 0, or it's like 7? It's like he's like, for looks like a 7 to me. Like, well, from it going sideways, it is to me it looks like blah. Talking about it's like, if you may think about it, it's like use the word say blah. It means it's like it don't equal to nothing. It is really, anybody would probably think about that if you want to raise money, or if you want to go ahead maybe save up money, collect money, whatever it is. It's like maybe from a game. I don't know about maybe a game of poker or a game of, on a pool table it is, but anybody probably thinking about if you were to play any type of game that inquired like where you had a chance to be able to win some money, it is, and that knowing about that, if you want to place a bet or anything like that, I bet you some money, if I score 20 points or anything like that. And anybody could probably think about that, really, it's not really good to bet on anything, really. But on here into the knowing about what here is that talking about with the Sonic Zero, it is basically, anybody could probably think about that 0 means so less, of course, that really that nobody really wants to count it as a number. It's like with 1, and anybody probably think about, I don't even want to count 1 as a number because it's so low, it's so cheap. It is so low. What am I going to do with 0? What am I going to do with negative? It is. But on your hand too, to know about with Sonic though, a lot of times anybody probably think about with Sonic though, is that with Sonic, that if he were to collect maybe about 20 rings, it is. I'm sure most of us have worked the controls. You see on the Sega Genesis, it was worked the controls. It was, and knowing about how many rings that you can collect, it was. And anybody could probably think about, hey, use like any other type of cartoon character, such as besides a video game, or whatever they say, talking about maybe, maybe the Mighty Ducks or anything like that. But basically, it's like, you think about this, it's like whenever you're playing a game, that if you were to collect any type of points, you say out of rings or whatever, and then knowing about that yep, it's that typical thing that you would see on those games. It is. Maybe if it's a matter of fact about collecting rings, or maybe playing like a game, such as maybe Jeopardy or anything like that, like talking about the type of money that you think that you win on that. Answer a few questions. What are you into to knowing about with the Sonic though, that the memories that I can remember, of course, I can remember quite a few of them, but the memories I can remember, of course, about the Sonic is that knowing about that he that it would be 1 or 2 players, it was, and collecting a bunch of rings, and I can remember these needles, if I can remember right, these if I can draw them out, but these like little thorn and needles right here, a lot of times, if most of us remember those during gameplay, it was, and that knowing about the types of things that Sonic will be running into during the gameplay, it was, if it was like what you call like the iron ball or anything like that, or say from Dr. Robotnik, it is, but Dr. say Mr. say call him, say I guess his name would be like what you call Mr. Robotnik. Other than that you have right here. Got right here is the Sonics. I got the shoes right here. The type of shoes to where that they say that where he's able to run at, you say fast speeds it is. But the way I think about it with a lot of times, anybody probably thinking about with Genesis though, with Genesis that with the Sonic character, it is that more likely that Genesis is a core. What I hear is no longer around, but on the other hand too, that if you have some Sega Genesis stuff, and then of course maybe some other Genesis like the Genesis, Dreamcast or anything like that, any other type of Sega, any other type of Genesis products to say from the actual companies it is. But on the other hand too, that knowing about that Sonic the Hedgehog, of course, if I can remember right, whenever my parents bought me the Sega Genesis back those couple of years ago, would have been about 1991. It was I think it was early 1991. One of them, of course, the game console I got came with the Sega Gen, with the Sonic the Hedgehog. It was that was the game it was, and I can remember that. Yeah, the other game of course was Altered Beast also. Anybody could probably think, if most of us can remember Altered Beast, but. With the Altered Beast, and I can remember that went down to the Lake of the Ozarks, and I brought my Sega Genesis with me that one year. It was a long time ago. If I can remember, I think that would have been about 92, 93, something like that, around the spring and summer, whenever we went out there at the Lake of the Ozarks, and that we were, and then I remember brought my Sega Genesis and playing Altered Beast it was, and just thinking about it, it's like, yeah, they're talking about. That if I can remember the details about the game, it's like whenever a man that would turn into a beast, after he were to go after I think the bad beast or something like that. It's remember the title, and I can remember playing a little bit of it, but then of course on the other hand too, that I don't know, I don't know if I would say it was stupid, but on the other hand too, nowadays with the graphics nowadays, like on the Xbox and of course the PlayStation, and then of course with the Nintendo Wii it is, and we were probably thinking about that. Yeah, it's like with the graphics nowadays, anything like that. What is better than other than the fact about that? Yeah, you go to the game store it is, and then knowing about the fact about that. Yep, you can't really go into a game store with what you calls like if you were to take the zero, number 0 right here. Anybody probably thinking about. It's like, yep, well, with 0 is so little of a number to where that the fact about that, yep, if you ain't got no money, then more likely just can't buy whatever, but maybe earn points or whatever, but anybody probably think about, if I can remember right, if like key algebra is, or, is a type of mathematics is like if you were to earn points it is. If it was like what you call 0.00, it was, and let's just say that if you were to trade a game in, anybody could probably think about with trade in, if you were to think about doing any type of a trade in value, it is like talking about with trade in, trade an old game in for another game it is, which I'm sure some stores that more likely still do that, to where you can trade a game in for another one and be able to earn money that way. But on the other hand too, that knowing about anybody probably thinking about any type of rewards or anything like that, it's like talking about with Sonic though, you collect the number of rings it is, and knowing about if you collect the number of rings and to be able to reach to that point to where it goes above 0, and then it goes to like what you call like maybe 5 or 10 or something like that. And anybody could probably thinking about that yeah, actually I would like to see it that go past 0, go up to maybe to 10, because more likely anybody probably thinking about knowing about nowadays that with 0 it is, and with nowadays it's like it's easy to spend money, but then of course it's easy to save money or to make money or any type of points like that. And anybody probably think about it, just mainly concentrate on the fact about how to collect. and how to collect, because the more you collect, more likely then those points and numbers are going to start adding up, and then those zeros are going to start adding up to a certain amount, to where that maybe if I think about about how many points do you have, well, I've lost count. And that knowing about anybody probably thinking about what does it usually mean whenever people use the word you lost count? Does it mean the fact about that maybe you're just going the opposite? You're not spending enough money, or you're spending too much money. Maybe you're not spending enough time, so far as just spending enough money. It is, but on the other hand too, that knowing about, and you could probably think about that for the Sonic Zero, is that really for the values, of course, of knowing about that, yep, that anybody could probably think about if you were to trade in value. It is maybe trying to sell something on eBay, that we could probably think about if you try to sell something that more likely it's not all your property either. That knowing about, it's like, I guess you just gotta go by, say, is the cash value, is knowing about how much it's worth and stuff. But on the other hand too, that knowing about with me, I have not sold any video games in quite a while. But the way I think about it, I'm like that, yeah, anybody could probably thinking about that with the number 0. It is with the number 0 that you could probably think about. It's like it's not even a number, since it equals to so less. And then maybe you have 0 ideas for what you want to do. Maybe you don't have, you have 0 thought, 0 say ideas for knowing about for the direction. Of course, is knowing about where you want to go. But on the other hand, knowing about that, yeah. There's always an idea of knowing about from the starting point and the ending point. Is knowing about with, like, if you take the character Sonic, by the way, take the character Sonic, and then when I say be going on, like what you call, it's like on a type of spin, to where that you find out about anything that you research. If we were to do our homework, then more likely we would find out what the reward is. And at knowing about between what you call maybe a cool pair of sneakers, or if it's anything related to any type of art design, it's like this is your award if you represent this. It's like talking about really how do these rings connect? It's like if you want to show us the magic trick about how the rings connect, how did they split and then how did they connect? It is, but on the other hand, knowing about there's the artwork, and of course with the calculator, knowing about the points for the count, and that knowing about right here, it's like other words with my math teacher would probably say, well, that was free artwork by freehand. But on the other hand too, that knowing about with freehand it is. With freehand it is knowing about what's my point score it is. And anybody probably think about, well, it's plus 10 because you mentioned about this, and it's plus 10 because you mentioned about that, it is. But on the other hand too, it's minus plus 15 because the details you put in it, and then on the other hand, minus 10 because you did not mention, of course, about the fact about the creator's name or anything like that. And then on the other hand too, that knowing about the price is like whenever the game was first released, you didn't mention of course about how much it was back then. And on the other hand too, that knowing about the detail is knowing about with Sonic and of course with his friend. He had about 5 friends and he didn't mention them. But on the other hand too, that knowing about, it's like if you want to explain about how you arrived at your answer, it's just knowing about with me that if I can explain about how I arrived at my answer, and just by knowing about, this is knowing about, you learn by my own doing. But other than that, it's like talking about, it's like so far as knowing about, it's like how well it was taught. But other than that, it's taught about for the Sonic Zero coloring activity.